Welcome, whoever you are, to Meg's Magical Mansion, a virtual guest house for spiritual wayfarers, a place where the ordinary becomes magical, where wisdom is yours for the asking, and where your higher nature is just a wish away. Thanks for joining us here today at Meg's Magical Mansion. I'm Meg, and this is my trusty butler, Scallion. And here in my lap is my beautiful assistant, Miss Alice Poopers. She went to the parlor and got a haircut, and I made her another new outfit. Ta-da! Hey Scallion, I'm so excited everybody's here today because our topic today is shadow work.
What evil lurks in the hearts of men? Only the shadow knows.
You've been listening to those vintage radio broadcasts again, Scal.
You think they're vintage?
Well, Poops, I guess that means it is time for Words of Wisdom. And today our Words of Wisdom come to us from the world-renowned psychiatrist Carl Jung, student and devotee of Sigmund Freud. And we have a special quote on shadow work from him. So sit back, relax, and enjoy some words of wisdom from Carl Jung.
Unfortunately, there can be no doubt that man is, on the whole, less good than he imagines himself or wants to be. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. If an inferiority is conscious, one always has a chance to correct it. Furthermore, it is constantly in contact with other interests, so that it is continually subjected to modifications. But if it is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected.
Well, did you enjoy those words of wisdom, Miss Alice Poopers? Yes, she has another new dress. We have new outfits again this week. I've been a busy little sewing person. Well, today we are talking about shadow work. And what is it? Who should be doing it? How do you do it? I have done quite a bit of shadow work myself personally, and it's something I've been studying and interested in for quite a few years now. So I thought it would be a great topic to bring up. And I'll tell you why. I see it in a number of different communities. In the psychology community, there is definitely shadow work, and Carl Jung was the main founder and proponent of that in the school of, traditional psychology. But you also see shadow work in shamanism, which means it's really been around since way before Carl Jung. No offense, he did westernize a lot of these ideas for us. But it's very prevalent in many different forms of shamanism from many different cultures all around the world for thousands of years. It's also something that nowadays I see a lot of use in witchcraft. So all of my friends out there who are practicing witches, I bet a lot of you have heard of it or have done some of this or might be interested in learning a little bit more about it. So whether you're just on a spiritual path, whether you're actually interested in psychology, whether you are a witch or involved in that, the witch arts, you can use shadow work in your practice. So there's many different ways. And like everything else, there's no right, there's no wrong. It's all about what works best for you. And today I'm going to share a little bit about what it is, some ways I've used it, and just maybe give you some tips and ideas and start a conversation about it. So the first thing I want to say is I'm not a trained anything. I just personally have done shadow work. So I'm just really kind of sharing my own thoughts and experiences today. You guys know I'm not an expert on anything. I am a fellow seeker on the path with you. And this is something I have really used to help me with a lot of my deep, dark, deep healing that needed to be done. And it was very, very effective, which is why I want to share with you today. I think we need to begin by talking about what is your shadow. And in this case, we're not talking about your literal shadow, obviously, but we are talking about your spirit or psychological shadow. And your shadow forms Anytime you deny yourself, your true authentic self is kind of how I like to think about it. Anytime your true authentic self is denied and you have to stuff it down and you don't really deal with it, that grows your shadow. So your shadow gets caught up with a lot of stuff, which is why it's important to realize your shadow has both negative and positive aspects to it. Your shadow often trips you up. It gets in your way and it interferes with you being able to manifest and make the kind of progress you want to make. So it can be a negative thing. But on the other hand, all the stuff that you've stuffed down, look at a lot of it. Most of it is probably good stuff that due to circumstances, upbringing, society, or cultures you were told wasn't appropriate. Let me give you an example of that. There's so many movies about this, about the kid growing up that wanted to, was training to play a classical instrument, training all his life to be some sort of classical or, trained musician. The jazz singer. He was supposed to be a cantor at the temple, but he wanted to be a jazz singer. There's so many movies where the main character is supposed to be some sort of world-class classical trained singer or instrumentalist, but they want to play, swing or jazz or rock or bebop or some kind of popular music, and that is the conflict of the story. Well, that's a great example of somebody telling you to stuff down your real authentic self and be this self. So when you stuff down things about your authentic self, things about how you're supposed to look or what you're supposed to do or how you're supposed to behave, and you stuff them down, they grow in your shadow. And your shadow can grow dark and deep and nasty if you just ignore that stuff. But the truth is, the worst thing you can do to any living thing, the worst thing you can do to it, ignore it. When you ignore your shadow, it can start to grow out of control. And that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it gets deeper and darker and more separate from you. When your shadow is separate from you, it does become a problem for you. But I want you to understand that the stuff in your shadow itself is not bad. What's bad is the fact that it's getting ignored. So it's going to kick its head up, ugly little head up. And it will. And right at the most inopportune moments. And it's the number one thing that stops people from being able to manifest. Now, people believe in psychology, it's more prevalent that this is from things in your childhood in this life. Because Carl Jung probably didn't believe in reincarnation or the idea that you live multiple lives, which I do happen to believe in. I have an episode on that coming up. But my point being, they pinpointed it to your childhood. And that is very true. You can have things from your childhood that you have stuffed down, that you have never fully addressed, that are growing and are sitting in the shadow, just gnarly and ready to rear up their head because they've never been addressed. And also in shamanism, you see the idea that you could have things from past lives. So maybe, you have a problem manifesting your wealth and abundance, but it's nothing like your parents did to you in this life. You had great parents. They, showed you how to handle money and were good with money and things like that. But it's something, maybe you even pick good parents to help you learn lessons about it. Whatever you're supposed to be learning, it may be from past lives as well. So you kind of want to look for, what are the things that are causing me to react? What are the things that are causing me to be in that mode, go into fear mode, panic mode, reactive mode? Because when that happens, it's usually your old friend the shadow kicking up its heels. Although we have to reiterate, what lives in your shadow isn't necessarily evil. In rare instances it might be, but for the most part, for most of us, it's just, I wanted to be an interior designer and I had to be a bus driver. Seriously. Or, it could be ways our parents treated us when we were kids. If we grew up in homes where, perhaps there weren't good parenting skills and we were not well parented. And that can bring things. I have done a lot of shadow work to go back and deal with things from my childhood through no fault of my parents. I'm really not here to criticize my parents. Trust me, they did the best they could and they actually did a great job with my sisters and I. But, obviously nobody's perfect. So there are things in my childhood I have been able to go back and work on things that happened with me, with my parents, with my siblings, with my extended family, things you can go back and work on. And things from your past lives you can go back and address and unpack and work on. But this is why you don't do shadow work when you're mid-crisis, or you're having a tower moment, or the world's falling down around you in some way. That is not the time to do shadow work. The time, dear people, to do your shadow work is when you are in a good, safe, secure moment in life. When you're really working on yourself in a very relaxed, easy, genuine way. That is the time to do shadow work. You cannot do it mid-crisis. You need to be in a calm, collected, cool state of mind when you do it. It's for dealing with the gnarly little things that you haven't quite put to bed. You might have done a lot of work on some of your issues that you know you have, but you know there might be those little gnarly bits that are still nag at you. I personally suffer from PTSD. So for me, I think I've got things under control a lot, but then you never know, something triggers me. So I have to kind of think about that, and that's my dark shadow, is when I get triggered and I have to think about how I'm going to respond or react. You know, in the beginning when I didn't understand, I would have a panic attack. It was kind of weird and scary, but now I don't really have to have a panic attack because I've done a lot of shadow work. So I'm able to deal with the triggers a lot better. So I encourage all of you to really look at the things in your life where you're triggered, where you have a reactive moment. What makes you lose your cool? What makes you have fear or panic or anger? It's probably your shadow acting up. And look at what's going on in that situation. Big clues as to what you need to work on in your shadow work. So, how do you do shadow work? What do you do? There are so many ways you can do it, guys. So all I can really do is share with you my personal ways that I've found that work for me. But there is tons of information out there on shadow work. I will link some other YouTube episodes down below from other creators that are wonderful. And it's really well worth your time to do some learning on this. So how can you do shadow work? Well, first of all, you have to be, as I said before, you have to be in a good place. This is not something you do when you're in a bad place. You need to do the bulk of your healing, and this is kind of helps you. Once you're into shadow work, you can maybe be a little more fluid with it. But in the beginning, you want to make sure you are in a very good mental and emotional place in your life when you start trying to do it. So again, don't do it when you're in the middle of catastrophe. So the first thing you have to do is get really good at meditating and get yourself into a deep trance-like state. I think doing chakra opening meditations can be very helpful. And as a matter of fact, especially if you are dealing with childhood issues, doing root chakra opening is very, very important because that's where you hold all that stuff from your childhood. It's in your root chakra. So if you can really concentrate, and this weekend I'm going to put up a special guided meditation just for opening your root chakra. I can't really make one on doing shadow work because it's so personal. It's very personal, but I can do one to help everyone open their root chakra. So if you want to go further and do your shadow work, that would be a great way to start. It would be like opening up that root chakra, and then you have to really be able to allow yourself to transport, leave your body and transport back to some of these situations, especially if you're dealing with things from this life, and that's where I would start. Because if you haven't done a lot of past life regression, you won't know where to go. So I would start with some things from this life, and I would pinpoint where you want to go. You know me, I like to prepare in my journal, maybe have 1 or 2 questions about what was going on, if there was an incident or a way you were treated or over a long period of time, maybe bullying at school or other things like that. It can have to do with body image, the way your body was treated by people around you, and things that really impacted the way you look at your own body and your own image. Anything that was going on that you feel was a real challenging, difficult time for you growing up and was one of those things you've been working on. This is a great place to start. And then think if there's a moment that you can go back to. And here's the thing, guys, you cannot change the past. But you can change how you feel about the past now. And shadow work is great. And one of the best ways I've found to do it is to go back as myself now, fully formed adult me from this moment, from the future, go back to that child who is crying or upset or angry or frustrated or whatever it was. Go back to that child. When you go back and do shadow work, you gotta remember, do not judge, because getting judged was put a lot of these problems in the shadow in the first place. Do not fix. People fixing you is what put a lot of the stuff in your shadow in the first place. Do not reprimand. Getting reprimanded is what put a lot of stuff in the shadow in the first place. Your job is to comfort, integrate, be the person you wish had been there for you as a child. You can go back and be that person. Don't try to fix it. You can't. But you can console your child, and you can point out to your child, especially if it's like your youth, your young teen or young adult self, and you're in those moments of despair that we fall into in our teens and early 20s, and which so many of us do. That is a great time. Go back to yourself and say, hey, look at me now. Look what's going to happen to you. You're going to grow up to be a perfectly wonderful, awesome, and amazing, successful person. And by being able to show your younger and immature self what you're going to end up being is very, very, very comforting. That's what takes the sting away, the pain away. Because your child self in that moment knows. And I'm going to tell you what, you can do it for at really any point in your life. Because I've had things happen. As I said, I had PTSD, and that incident didn't happen to me until I was 50. So it can happen at any point in your life. But I'll tell you what, going back as me now, really having come so far down the road from that time in my life, and being able to go back to me in that moment, in the incident, there was an incident, and I can go back to it. And I can talk to myself now and say, you know what? Don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. And I can go back to it and I can say, this is hard now. This is not easy. This is very, very, very painful. But you are going to be okay. And I have come from the future. I have come from years and years in the future to come and tell you that it's going to be okay. And I'm proof, because look, I'm standing tall. This didn't knock me down, and I'm still going strong. And being able to go back and reassure yourself and unpack these things with that version of you. Talk to yourself. Comfort yourself. Acknowledge yourself. Admire some of these qualities are often good qualities. Artistic creativity, things like that have been stuffed down, and a lot of times your family's told you, oh, you have to be, a lawyer instead of a ballet dancer. And that your inner ballet dancer is just crushed, and you need to go back to that child and talk to them and say, hey, I may not be a ballet dancer, but I'm still dancing. I dance and I do this, or other things happen because of that. And reassure that inner child, that inner ballet dancer, that they're still dancing. They're going to dance whether it's ballet or whatever. So going back, accepting, acknowledging, comforting, being willing to just unconditionally love yourself in those moments when perhaps no one else was. You can come back and love yourself. And that's really, guys, that's what shadow work is. It's you in a good place in life, I'm feeling pretty fully formed. I feel like I've got some stuff going on. I can go back and deal with this. I can go back. And if you're ready and you've been able to go back and address some of your issues from this lifetime, you might want to consider doing some past life regression, finding out some things about some of your past lives. Then you can go back to them. So we may have to do some episodes on reincarnation and past life regression. I think it might be an interesting topic. Let me know down below in the comments if that is something you'd like to talk about a little bit more. But again, Love yourself. This is why this comes right on the heels of the worthiness episode, which if you didn't see, please go back and watch. Because this idea of loving on yourself, knowing you truly are worthy because you are star stuff, this is very helpful to reiterate this, to go back to your younger self, go back to your past life self, and tell yourself this. Come back with some of those positive affirmations from that guided meditation on worthiness and go tell those to yourself, your younger self, your past life self. Go help yourself work on those issues. Especially when you're a child and you may not understand. Having the adult version of you come back and comfort and acknowledge and accept and just welcome with open arms this little broken child that's inside of you helps you put it back together in a deep, deep way.
Hey everybody, it's me, your friend Angelica. I'm taking over the giveaway this week. So I have a Visa gift card, and I hid the card number in one place in the episode, but I hid the expiration date and CVC code in a completely different place, so you have to find two things. And I also have an Amazon gift card. To win that one, it's just like normal. Down below in the comments, please tell me something you learned about shadow work by watching this week's episode, and you'll be entered to win. And we'll have our drawing at noon, May 15th, which is Sunday. So tune in for the short, and we'll let you know who the winner is then. Good luck, everybody! 2 giveaways, come on. I'm way nicer.
Thank you so much for joining us here today at Meg's Magical Mansion. And remember, in the words of Buddha, 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. So thank you for sharing your time and attention with us here today at Meg's Magical Mansion. Hey, if you had a good time, why not give us a like or a share? Hey, hit that subscribe button. You can always ring the bell, sing it, oops, and then we can let you know when we post new episodes. Check us out on Instagram. And of course, we will see you back here next week at Meg's Magical Mansion. Okay, somebody says I should get a treat. Somebody says I should get a treat. You should get a treat because you're very sweet.